So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was written and directed by James Gunn and once again features Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel, Karen Gillan, Palm Clementeith, as well as a few new faces including Will Poulter and Chikudi Imuji. I'm probably mispronouncing that name, I apologize. And this time around, following the events of the previous Guardians of the Galaxy movies, as well as Infinity War and Endgame, the Guardians come across a foe from one of their pasts, and they now must take care of this guy before everything comes crashing down and the Guardians are destroyed once and for all. So this was a movie I was definitely looking forward to. Of all the Marvel movies that were coming out this year, this was the one I was looking forward to the most. I do really enjoy the first two Guardians of the Galaxy movies to the point where I think Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a little bit underrated in my opinion. So I was definitely looking forward to this. The trailers looked really good. Even with all the controversy surrounding around James Gunn, I was glad they rehired him. And I was really excited to see how this final chapter would conclude, what was going to happen next. And overall, I definitely enjoyed this movie. This was a good time. I felt when it was being funny, it was definitely really funny. When it was being serious, it was really well handled. And I also feel like I do have some issues, but I'll talk about them. But overall, I do really enjoy this movie. So, what works in the movie? A lot of the actors do a really good job, and it reminds me of a lot of the chemistry that they had in the previous movies. I do really like Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana in this movie. Zoe Saldana actually gets a lot more to do in this movie than she did in the previous two movies. And I'm actually really glad about that. She's really good in this movie, probably her best performance. Karen Gillan's also really good in this movie, although I kind of feel like she may have taken a little bit of a backseat with her arc. I feel like her arc may be kind of done. It's just kind of disappointing because Nebula was one of my favorite characters in the MCU because of her redemption arc. I thought Karen Gillan does a really good job, and I think she's also good in this movie, but I feel like her arc is mostly done at this point. Dave Bautista is also decent in this movie. Again, one of the better performances from him, I feel like. And when he comes into his own in this movie, it's also really well handled. Bradley Cooper in this movie as Rocket. I thought Bradley Cooper was good. Here, he's actually great. He's not in the movie very much, unfortunately, but when he's doing the voice of Rocket, it's actually really good, and I actually really liked his character a lot more this time. Even Groot in this movie, I thought was really good. I thought Groot was good, but here, there were moments where it's like, okay, this is really awesome. When he's in an action scene, when he does something, it's like, okay, I did not expect that from him. I really enjoyed this movie. Palm Clementeith, I thought, also did a decent job. Also, Chikudi Iwuji, again, mispronouncing that name, I apologize. I liked his villain throughout the movie. I kind of liked how, he was this godlike figure who was very pompous and serious, but as the movie continues, he's kind of just losing it, and he's kind of losing that superiority, I would say. It's definitely a really good performance, and I actually really liked him in this movie. And guess what I'm trying to say with this movie is that everyone gets something to do in this movie, and I actually really do like that with this movie, because I feel like when there's like team-up movies, they usually get sidelined. Some characters get, put on the back seat, and they don't really get to do a whole lot. So I feel like this movie actually did really well by them. And again, like the other two Guardians of the Galaxy movies, this movie is fun, and it's funny throughout. The majority of scenes, I'm laughing throughout them. I think it was really funny. I recall a lot of the jokes I saw last night, and I'm laughing because I'm just laughing at them. They were decently funny. It doesn't go a little too far like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but it goes like around where Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was. Like, just safe enough to be entertaining, but like not too far where it crosses the line. And there are a lot of fun sequences throughout this movie, like especially towards the end of the movie. Like there's this one take where they're all taking out a bunch of bad guys. That was really well done. That was really fun. That was exciting. And there's like a bunch of sequences in the movie that are just incredible to see. Now let's get into what I don't really like about this movie. The soundtrack. Now, the first two Guardians of the Galaxy movies have really good soundtracks. This one may be the weakest one, if I'm being honest. I didn't really like the music too much. I don't want to say the music is bad in this movie, but I felt like they never really used it to its advantage. The only time they used it to its advantage, they used a Beastie Boys song, which, honestly, it was kind of annoying while watching it, because this is the second time this year where there is a long take sequence involving a Beastie Boys song in an action sequence in a movie starring Chris Pratt. That is the second time this year that's happened. And I'm like, if I had a nickel for every time that happened, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a whole lot, but it's weird that this happened twice. How is that even possible? And also, Will Poulter as Adam Warlock. I thought his performance was fine, and I kind of liked seeing him, like he was kind of like a little immature at the beginning, He's kind of like the opposite of the High Evolutionary. He was a little bit immature, but by the end he was very serious. I kind of didn't like the use of him in this movie. Like, he appears sporadically throughout this entire movie, and I wish that it was like that tease in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I wish it was worth more. It, also, I didn't like the use of Kraglin and Cosmo the Space Dog in this movie. They're also gone for a while from this movie, surprisingly. Like, a lot of characters just kind of disappear for a bit, and I kind of just didn't care for it. I kind of had to keep reminding myself, oh, right, the characters are also in this movie. Like, that happened with Adam Warlock and the Sovereign. That I kind of didn't like. Also, Kraglin and Space Dog, Cosmo the Space Dog. I'm like, okay, they're back. How could I forget that? Even it happens with Groot and Rocket. It's like, okay, they're in this movie too. How did I forget that? How did I forget two characters who have been in this movie from the beginning? How did I forget that? And also, even though most of the jokes are funny, there are times in this movie where they kind of have jokes that appear after very serious scenes. And while the serious scenes are actually really well handled, and it actually did make me emotional throughout the movie, sometimes they would follow it up with comedy, like really bad comedy, and I just felt like it didn't work as well. Well, I guess I'd rather go back to that in Marvel, because I know that was an issue with Marvel movies for the last few years. And also, there's some character moments where I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, why did Quill do this? There are a couple moments where Peter Quill's an idiot. It's like, if you thought he was an idiot in Infinity War, he definitely does some stupid things in this movie. And the production values in this movie, I think, are a little bit weaker than some of the other ones. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is like, oh, I want to go and explore all these worlds. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was a nice introduction to that. And here, it's not as good, I would say. I feel like that was not really the focus. The focus was the characters. The focus was the humor. The focus was the serious moments. So maybe that took a back seat to this movie, which I don't mind. So overall, I feel like the movie overall is definitely good, and I definitely think it's a worthy ending of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I do think the actors do a really good job. I like how everyone gets something to do in this movie. It's fun and funny throughout, but it's also serious, and that also really blends really well. There are some great sequences throughout this entire movie. But I do feel like some things just aren't as great as some of the other movies, like the soundtrack and the production values and some of the character motivations and some running gags are just not funny. And I wish some characters had a little bit more to do, but I'm not going to deny that I had a good time watching it. And honestly, unlike Ant-Man and the Wasp, I'm actually going to be glad if I see this again. So I'll give Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 3 out of 4 stars. See it. So, what's your favorite Guardians of the Galaxy movie, or who's your favorite Guardians of the Galaxy character? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.